there have been a number of probably living people who have definitely impacted me. And like, so my dad was a big driving factor, and he's been a great example of hard work and what you can accomplish by sitting down and doing the work. And I think in any vocation or profession, doing the work is the hardest part. And a lot of times, especially in this day and age, we see that people don't want to do the work, and they wonder why they're unhappy in different things. And I know people have all different kinds of backgrounds, and as you get older, you are more understanding of situations and privilege and different things, and you really do want the best for everyone. Like there's no room for, oh, they deserve that.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. I am your host, Randy Sparks, and today we're in for a treat. We've got one of my dear friends that I've known since I was a little boy, Nicholas Coleman. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you for having me. Come to my studio.
Well, it's an honor, and if you're watching this, you will see that we are not in my studio, but we were in Nick Coleman's studio. He is an artist, painter, just an amazing human, and we are going to learn a lot about his experience and about art and passion and triumphs and tragedies, and we'll see where it goes, but
we're going to try.
We're going to try. But yeah, and remember, nobody listens to a podcast that they don't think is very good, so please give us a review. If you like this, like it, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you very much for doing that. We are grateful for you. Thank you for that. Well, let's get on with this. I'd love to hear a little bit about Nick and how you're doing today. What's getting you excited today?
Today is an interesting day. My dad fell last night and broke his collarbone, of all funny things. And so his day's not going great, but my son was nice enough to stay the night with him last night and make sure everything was okay, and it was. And even this morning, I went over and hung out with him a little bit. And sometimes your day can be hijacked a little bit. And then also I woke up with a migraine, and I have the right kind of medication, and I'm good now. Otherwise, I would have told you already. And so today is a very interesting day, and I'm thrilled you could make it over.
Well, I am excited. So let's maybe go back in time and talk like how and why we know each other. But both of us grew up in the same town, and in fact still live in that town. We're in Utah, in northern Utah, right at the base of the Wasatch Mountains. And in fact, right outside of Nick's home, we are right at the base of some of the most beautiful views that you could ever see, and inspiration for your art, I'm sure.
Definitely.
But since elementary school, we've actually known each other, and we were just little kids playing tennis and skiing together and so on. And then one day we grew up, and now we do something else.
Yes.
And Nick kind of took up the family business.
Yes. So my father his name is Michael Coleman, and he grew up in South Provo in Utah, and his father worked on the railroad, and his mother was a homemaker, and he had a very interesting childhood, and he was definitely an anomaly when it came to, a little boy growing up in South Provo in a teeny tiny little house. And but he always wanted to be an artist, and his mother encouraged that, and his dad, who worked on the railroad, had no clue what to do with a boy like my dad. And I've listened to my dad's story over the years, and there was definitely something guiding him along, and his mother definitely helped him become who he was. But he definitely has a unique relationship with the West and his interests in hunting and trapping and fishing, and grew up in a beautiful place for all those things to happen. His father was not a hunter, did not fish or do anything outdoorsy. His dad just worked really hard, and my dad came along, and then when I came along, I just loved everything he was up to, and I loved going fishing. I loved every place he dragged me, and I begged to go on a number of trips with him, and it took a while for him to pick up on all the hints that I was dropping, and when I finally got to go on some of those trips, I realized some of these trips were dangerous, which is why he took so, because I was probably fairly little, thinking, what's the big deal? Why am I not in Africa with you at 9 years old or 10 years old? And it took till I was 16. And then we're also, when I was 21, we're up in Alaska, and it rained 3 days straight. All the mountains were socked in. The planes couldn't get anywhere. The place where we were camped, our camp was set up. The river came out of nowhere. We had to make it to higher ground, and we were stuck for 3 days. And his worry was, he goes, when the plane finally, we had to make our own runway. When the plane finally came to get us, he said he saw me flying away, and it was a two-seater plane, and he was waiting his turn with the hunter, and he had me get out first. And he goes, "Oh no, if they crash, his mother's gonna kill me." that was his big worry. And so with all these funny things, as you get older, you're like, oh, he was actually very worried about me. And then I realized some of these places he was going, which I think are fantastic, aren't for the faint of heart, or there's some danger involved in some of these places. And I loved that, and I always wanted that in my life.
Yeah, well, so that kind of spirit of adventure, I suppose I would say that. And it's this, if you're listening to this, you may want to switch and check it out on YouTube, or at least, if nothing else, check out Nick's Instagram, which I'll put in the comments there, so you can get a view of what Nick creates, what inspires him. And it's primarily Western themed Americana.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, Native American, West wildlife. And so that kind of old, adventure type of experiences that you have in traveling to Alaska and things.
There's definitely, that spirit of adventure and kind of timeless spirit of adventure is what I think I've probably always been searching for and trying to make sure it remains in my life even as I get older. So
tell me a little bit about that, about your dad. I mean, it's terribly broke his collarbone yesterday, but he's been such an impactful figure in your life, not only as a father, but as an inspiration with what became your career as an artist.
Yeah.
And so maybe talk a little bit about the importance and impact of that, and how you and he connected, because you've got other siblings too who have artistic ability as well, if I remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so that kind of runs in the family.
So there was definitely, growing up with my dad, I think, I don't know if it was just my personality or how the way I came, I just happened to love everything he was up to. Well, we had early mornings, we had a little funny muskrat trap line that we'd go check the traps, and we'd look for mink and raccoons, and he grew up, like, that's how he made his money as a little kid. And he bought his first baseball mitt, his first single shot, J.C. Higgins shotgun, and riding home with it from the sporting goods store on his bike, aiming it at everything. And when you could do those kinds of things. And so I think he tried to recreate that a little bit. And where we grew up to was a little neighborhood with a pond in it, with a river that came in and that went out. And it was kind of next to also a golf course, which was great to be living next door to. I don't know if they appreciated us as much as we, because we did help with their muskrat problems and different things, and there was always a fishing pole leaning against the house. I could run out to the pond and catch things, and I was saving baby ducks, and then like I said, the fun part with my dad is where he was always a scoutmaster, and we're always out in the canyons and the valleys, and where we lived in this valley, there's the Utah Lake, there's Provo River that comes down and flows into Utah Lake, and we have fantastic mountains and valleys and canyons and places to hike and camp, and all of that was just so much fun, and being involved in the Boy Scouts at an early age too, and heading to scout camps up in northern Idaho and Maple Dell and up Payson Canyon and other different places around here was just magic for a kid to grow up in. And I think my dad really was trying to, I still drive him around and he goes, oh, that's where we used to go fishing. That's where the mill race used to be. Oh man. And everything, it's not as bad as I'll make it sound, but everything's piped over now, and there's roads and there's houses, and Pheasant Green neighborhood is houses now. It's not where the pheasants are anymore. But then he'd also give me, I love books. We're in my studio looking at a lot of books back at us, and he would give me a lot of books, early trapping in Yellowstone, life and death on the Yellowstone, and grizzly bear attack stories and mountain men stories. And I loved all of it. And that's kind of where and then at school, where Randy and I met, I was like the old school artist. All that kid is into art, and people that, if they knew my dad or had been to my house, they probably understood where that came from. But I just always did that. And then you have friends in high school making fun of you for funny interests, and I just continued to have them. And even talking to my dad in high school, he had a trap line, and he's like, I think I made it to one school dance, and he like, that was just not what his experience growing up is different than most kids, and I think even mine was different. And I think a lot of the kids that we were friends with, we all love the outdoors, we love skiing, we love being outside, and growing up in the 80s and 90s was, looking back now, I think we're pretty lucky in a magical time where you did lots of things, and there wasn't any of the social media stuff that can mess kids up, and then now we try to make sure our kids are doing outdoorsy things, and we kind of reconnected too with our kids being on the ski team up at Sundance, and I thought that was great, that's what Sundance is still is a magical place. You go back there and it's still so pretty, and it's a small ski resort, which I think is the best part about it. Is everyone raves about Snowbird or Alta or Park City, and it's getting. I remember when it was $27 was a ski pass, and then one day it was $50. You're like, what do they think they are? Do they think they're Deer Valley? What's wrong with these guys? And I don't even know what it is anymore. It's a lot more than that.
It's a bit more than that, but you know what? It's just up the street, and it's gorgeous. And every time I go there, I just feel like I'm going back home.
Oh yeah.
So. Well, I wasn't aware that people were teasing you about being like the kid with, the unique interests in art and stuff during high school. I don't certainly remember doing that.
I'll tell you, you didn't actually. So this is kind of funny. When we were in our early 20s, it was my birthday, and for some reason, all of our friends went out to a Chinatown restaurant. Do you remember this at all?
Ooh, remind me.
So what was really funny is all our 14 friends, I don't know I can't remember who was there. For some reason, they thought I was paying for everybody.
Oh, wonderful.
And you said, at the very end, you looked around and went, no. By the way, I was very happy that someone did this, stood up for me, because I probably would have paid for it actually. But you're like, no, it's we're here for his birthday, right? I'm confused. Wait, we're not paying for him? And then all of a sudden, everyone paid for me. And it was like, that had never happened before, by the way. That was that was a first.
I love that you remember that story. I don't remember that story. And wow, if anybody's going to remember anything about me, I'm glad that it was for something they were happy about.
But no, it was one of those funny moments. I was like, gee, this is great. And I've always appreciated that. So.
Oh, well, anyway. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, I do want to get back a little bit to kind of the just because the room that we're sitting in, again, if you're listening, check it out on YouTube and you'll get a glimpse of behind us what's Nick's studio here. And, we're sitting in his studio chairs. There's a lot of wonderful works of art that have been created with Nick sitting in these chairs, but he's got a partially completed work of art that I'm looking at that right behind Nick that he's painting with 3 Native Americans on horses and, on the plains. But what's magic to you about this kind of timeless Americana, Native American historical art? So
something happened to me as a kid, I think, with some of these books that I read, and a lot of these places my dad took me. A lot of times it was early in the morning before the sun had come up. And I have lots of funny memories of being very cold, wintertime, and we'd walk the riverbanks, and I'd be jumping on the frozen little bits of pockets of ice that were there on the edge of the river or in the dirt, and he'd point out what a raccoon track wasn't versus a mink track or a muskrat, signs of muskrat, and then he would show me when the sun would come up, the light would hit certain different areas first, and our breath would be coming out, and he would tell me funny stories of animals that would come back to life on him and be biting him, and that one funny story of his brother who he would trap with had no problem with cold water, but cold water always affected me. He goes, my hands are so cold, and then everything was just always, but you get to see certain things. And for some reason, like that, which was always magic to me, is catching that, and the photographers and filmmakers talk about, that magic hour and that early in the morning and right before the sun goes down. There's this time of evening that's just fantastic. And if you are able to get out, and the painting that's behind me too it's a landscape from up in near Afton, Wyoming. And some of our friends invited us to a piece of property. He was I can't remember what his job title was, but he got to help Orvis, and he was Johnny Morris's assistant, or not grounds, property manager. There we go. That's a better word for it. But he would help, say if a piece of property had a quarter mile of river on it, he would move the earth around so it'd be 2 or 3 miles worth of river, and he would, and we were trading. His wife almost shot an elk, and would I please paint her a painting of this elk? They got a kind of a terrible photograph of it, but could you bring it to life? I don't have a lot of money, but I can take you fishing. And I said, sounds good to me. And so we took our kids up and met his kids, and he's become a good friend, and but he's and he loved his painting, and he's I think it's I really appreciate everybody who loves what they do, because I think obviously if everyone did the same thing, it'd be boring. But I love certain people who are passionate about what they do, what they are able to do for other people, like in that kind of service. And he was, complimenting me on my painting, and I was looking at what he had done with the earth. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "This is amazing. I can put it on the canvas. You've done it with the earth. This is like they would look natural. They look perfectly good, and there was a healthy trout population in there. But this particular painting, we were there, and it was like a symphony of Mother Nature. I mean, there was birds chirping. There was you could hear foxes in the background, and then a few minutes later, there was a pack of coyotes you could hear howling, and birds flying in and out. And then there were some even little frogs that were down making some funny noises in the long grass, and our kids were collecting goose feathers and finding goose eggs, and it was springtime, and that's kind of what this is. I'll have to send you the video because it's worth seeing, and I couldn't believe what I was witnessing almost. And so a lot of times when I am in places like this and I put myself in places like this, that's what I want to share when I come back to the studio. Is turned into I like to share what gets me excited, and at the same, and my kind of a lesson too. My dad taught me, when I wanted to be a painter, he's like, well, make sure the landscape is, make sure it's what it needs to be, and then anything could go into that landscape. And so again, all the stories he's had me read, and the books I read on my own interest took me into I think the Western landscape. And like I said, I love so many fantastic places up in Alaska and up into Canada and British Columbia and Calgary and Banff and even up into Sweden and Africa and all these wonderful places that a lot of times are filled with wildlife. Sometimes like I had an art professor at BYU, the university next door here where we live. He was one of my very last classes, and he kind of got after this 35-year-old woman who was a high school art teacher who wanted to get more education so she'd go back and be a better art teacher. That's kind of how she explained why she was back in school doing this class. And he said, she said that she loved landscapes when he was asking, what do you like to paint? And he goes, oh, by the time we're done with you, I'll have you painting parking lots. And I kind of looked at him funny. I said, what do you mean? And she goes, yeah, what do you mean? She's like, to learn and to grow and to try to, he's like, no, there's too many landscape painters out there. I want someone painting parking lots because no one does that. And I said, yeah, for good reason. That's boring. I said, unless, I don't know, there might be someone out there that can make it interesting. But I said, but that's something. I said, we're all students. We all have different interests. I said, nobody needs to be doing that. And especially not for learning or growing, but just because. And he and I didn't really get along. And he didn't like that I have a different, like he's the professor. I should be listening to him. But my opinion was they should be there to facilitate and help you grow into what you're chasing, what you're after and what you're trying to pursue and whatever artistic. That's where art is interesting because it's not like math, where math kind of is one of those eternally true things that you can't really deviate from a way to get, from the problem to the answer. Art can be subjective and to most part, I've learned over the years that people approach it in so many different ways, and there are so many different answers. And I've even had a hard time and argued a few people over the years, and I try not to engage, but I can't help myself sometimes because some certain things drive me nuts too much where I have to say something.
Well,
sorry.
So obviously your dad was very impactful,
very instrumental,
and inspiring to you. And I love how you describe going to these places and how that just fills you with inspiration and seeing the beauty of that magic hour, or going and seeing how this guy can create something so wonderful in a landscape and make it look natural. But then that inspires you to want to come back and paint it. So finding inspiration, I think, is something that captivates me. And other than your dad, who has been inspiring and motivating to you?
So I've joked over the years that all my heroes are dead. And I've posed in front of a few paintings and sculptures and stated as much on like on Instagram or Facebook or something like that. Kind of a little bit joking, but a little bit truthful as well. And there have been a number of probably living people who have definitely impacted me. And so my dad was a big driving factor, and has been a great example of hard work and what you can accomplish by sitting down and doing the work. And I think in any vocation or profession, doing the work is the hardest part. And a lot of times, and especially in this day and age, we see that people don't want to do the work, and they wonder why they're unhappy in different things. And I know people have all different kinds of backgrounds, and as you get older, you are more understanding of situations and privilege and different things, and you really do want the best for everyone. Like there's no room for, they deserve that. Yeah. Although that'd be easy to.
Well, I love that concept of being inspired by people. You're inspired by so many people that may no longer be alive, right? And you read about them. I mean, maybe some of them were alive and you knew them and now they've passed. but a lot of them were historical figures. But you said something I really like, where you're like doing the work. You know, so what is it about that means something to you?
I think I even read something recently. I think that Steve Jobs said is because artists ship something. I'm killing it, and I thought they do. You got to, because I've known a lot of professors over the years who don't have their work go out in the world. They hoard it all, and I can understand why sometimes, because you don't want to let certain things go. And I've come across paintings that I have let go, and I go, what was I thinking? And I go, what was someone thinking buying it? Especially in some of my early days. And I don't know if that's just confidence that I didn't deserve at the time, but I think sometimes that drives us enough to get over that little hump of where the level of whatever your expertise is at the time is lacking. But you get over that by putting in the hours, putting in the time, and my family and I on a trip we listened to the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell's book, and I liked so much of it, except for the very end where he was kind of saying, well, no one does it on their own. There's always something to get. And I'm like, actually, there is truth to that. But at the same time, the person had to put, they may have had the privilege, they may have had access to computers or different things, or but they still had to have that initial motivation, that initial drive to do the work.
Yeah.
That person, you can have everything at your fingertips, but if you don't do it, what happens? Nothing.
I love that. It's the merging of the agency and will to do the work combined with the luck of your circumstances.
Exactly.
Right. And they must go together.
Yeah, exactly. And so like even with my dad being an artist, like my older brother has dabbled in it but has gone on to do other things. My sister's already joked that my dad did all her art assignments in high school and different things, and it wasn't in her to do it. And she went on to be a nurse. Then my little brother works for Google, of all funny things, and is fantastic at what he does. And like, I don't know if everybody falls into what their dad does. I don't think that's the case. And it can be. But I think part of anything that we all find ourselves doing is that agency meeting whatever you happen to be surrounded by, and then again you have to like it. And it's always interesting to see what people are able to do given certain circumstances, and sometimes we find ourselves judging maybe people like, why didn't they do such and such? And again, that's not for us to decide.
Right. So when did you were always, even as a young child, interested in all these, what dad's doing and the adventure and so on, and interested in art? When was it clear to you that this was for real?
So somewhere in high school, I always wondered how my dad stayed in the studio all day long, painting, sculpting, and doing what he did. Like, because I loved it so much, but I'm like, how does he always do it? I want to go hang out with friends. I want to go on a date with the girl. How do you do all these things and still do that? And then I served, a church mission down in Brazil for a couple of years. And then somewhere on my mission too, I realized, I'm like, oh, you just do it. Like, you do it.
You just do the work.
You do the work.
Just buckle down and do the work, and it's not always pretty.
Yeah.
But the work must be done. And
my dad joked with me too. He goes, yeah, when you work for yourself, you have to come in when you're sick. You have to come in when you don't want to. When I tell people I'm an artist, sometimes I'll tell them I'm a painter. It's always hard to tell people exactly what I do. And if I say painter, they go, oh, houses. I go, no. And you go artist, and they go, oh, an artist. And then they have this. There's kind of a funny idea out there, that they're the starving artist, or they're kind of hippie-ish, or they don't, they kind of when they're in the mood. And I think there's definitely a number of artists, successful artists, who definitely have got the right idea about it, and they. It's their life. All our my travel plans revolve around my artistic endeavors. And I talked with a friend a few months ago, and he was asking me, because I was always impressed by his business that he's grown, and he's just recently sold. And he was telling me about his vision boards and all of his goals. I'm like, oh my gosh, he had goals. And because some were monetary goals, and I thought, man, that would have been maybe a little bit smarter of me to have set some of those kinds of goals. I had artistic goals, and he was asking, he's like, well, what do you mean artistic goals? I said, well, there was a museum show that I wanted to be a part of, and so I kept painting, and then I would submit, and then sometimes they would let you in, and sometimes they don't, and he goes, well, were you compensated, monetarily after? I said, well, yeah, sometimes to a point if your painting sold, sometimes it wouldn't sell, and so there's that aspect of it. And so like I say, I've worked and I've put in the work, and a nice consequence has been I've been able to sell paintings to continue to do what I like to do and love to do. But a lot of times some of the work that doesn't necessarily mean a monetary reward.
Yeah. Tell me a little about the like what your dad said about you got to get in there and work when you're sick and when you're uninspired, or you got to do the work.
So
how do you get through that? Because my guess is, regardless of your profession, a lot of us feel that, where some days we just feel in flow and inspired and just love it, and other days it's like, I'm just going through the motions, I'm trudging through to get it done, and that goes in waves. What's it like for you?
No, that sounds exactly it's funny that you mentioned it. How you put it is, I'm like, goodness, that's exactly how I feel sometimes. And I think you have to, on the days that you don't want to do it, you have to do it. And I've painted, 6 to 8 hours in a day, and I stand back to my painting and I go, oh no. And it just doesn't feel right. And I've taken a rag and wiped off 8 hours of work in 15 seconds.
Well, and tell me about that feeling. Like, what is it that you're feeling when you do that?
So when I was younger in painting and something like that would happen, I would be like very distraught, because you have all this work and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. You have all this buildup, and then you look at it maybe the day later when it's starting to dry, you're like, oh man, this is awful. And then my dad, when I was in my teenage years too, in his studio painting with him, he goes, your horse looks like a pig. I'm like, oh, it does not, and he had some pretty choice words. He didn't just build me up with my terrible work. He like, hey, you need to do that. Look closer, look harder. Is that really there? And so and he's also joked about how terrible of an art teacher he's been for me. And he wishes, he has other people, he's people that are dead, and certain academies that no longer exist, that were 100 years old that are gone. Mm-hmm. And wishes that I could have had the kind of structure, and he's self-taught. And so I kind of got an apprenticeship under him without him knowing that's what he was doing for me. And I didn't know that was happening, because I was also, as a teenager, part of my job was to make mats for his watercolors. And I would send mats out to New York and LA and different places that would order mats through my dad. Then I was the guy that was making them, and my older brother too. And he taught me how to make, he was a technician. He was great at making mats. I could fake straight lines. I could make things look straighter than they were, put it that way. And I wasted a lot of mat board with bloody fingers and different things that I would cut on the mat maker and to get things photographed, to get things shipped off. So I all of a sudden I had all these set of skills that I had no idea, like, oh, this is how you run an art business, basically. And then when I was 21, when I got back from this mission, even on my mission, I tried to paint on my preparation days, and it was just frustrating because I get everything set up, and then I have to take it right back down like an hour, 45 minutes later. And I was like, oh, this is killing me. And I came home and I just started painting. And also I didn't like going anywhere. I was like relieved and exhausted just to stay at my parents' home. But I got back to work painting because that's all I wanted to do for 2 years. And I got to do a little bit of it. And I left a few little paintings behind in Brazil to some people that I met, and was happy to be able to create whatever I did, paintings of sheep out in the field and different funny things. And, they both sat me down and they said, are you sure this is what you really want to do? And my parents, yeah. They said, it's not as easy as it looks. I said, this has never looked easy to me. Like you forget you've had me run paintings around, getting things photographed, shipping things off. And I always thought to myself, oh, I would never want to be a FedEx or a UPS driver, because lifting boxes, because and then I realized, oh, I'm going to be one of those forever, because I package up all my paintings myself. I take them down to FedEx or UPS, and I ship no matter what I'm doing. Each week there's always something coming in, going out. So I'll never get away from being a shipper guy.
Yeah. Well, me sitting in here right now and just looking around the studio and to see the taxidermy and the art, and there's a feeling in this room, and I love it. It's like the most perfect chaotic space that inspires. I love it. Every time I've been in here, I was telling you that before. So there's this romantic view that I have coming in here when I see you. I see what you show on Instagram of you producing art or showing pieces, or I come in here and we talk and laugh. But tell me about the hard part, or what, in the art world, what's the hard stuff that you go through? And
yeah,
let's go there.
Yeah. So over the years, like I say, in my studio are things I kind of have dragged home since I was a little kid. There's a lot of things here that have been here since, well, have followed me around since I was a little kid. And then I'm a really good preserver of little teeny tiny things, and heads and horns and antlers that I found, and skulls that I found, and places I've hunted and fished, and rocks from rivers from all over the place. And when we're just start peeking through the little piles of different things, I go, what on earth is this? And so what the studio kind of represents, I think, to me, and helps me through some of these hard times, different, because people kind of go, oh, you're lucky, you're an artist, you get to do this, you get to do that. And there is that to it. But what's kind of crazy, and I've been painting professionally now for about 24 years, but I've been pursuing it since I was a little kid, and begging to paint on my dad's paintings. And when he wasn't around, I would try to, I'd sneak in and paint things on his paintings and I thought I was doing a great job if he didn't get mad at me, but I think he just probably laughed at him, and probably painted over what I had ever painted the day before, or in the night, or in the morning. And as much as you can stay positive and try to just do your own thing, the hardest part, I think, and this is life for everybody too, is the interaction with other human beings that happen to be out there. And funny thing, they're there. They're not going away. They're always going to be there. And sometimes some people disappoint you, or you find yourself not meeting a criteria for certain groups of people, or an individual who is the gatekeeper to some of these shows and these goals that I've had. And you think you'd fit in just great. And then you find out, nope. And a lot of times, I think sometimes it's personality doesn't match with somebody's. And so they're almost like little kid expectations. I think I've had and still have probably, of, oh, so-and-so is really going to like me and my artwork. And then I find out quickly, nope, they don't. So there's kind of a funny disconnect between what you think you're doing versus what anybody else thinks you're doing. And my wife and I have joked, like, if you just stopped, would anyone actually notice? If you deleted yourself off of everything, there might be a few people, I think there might be a few would pop up and go, hey, what happened? Or what's going on? And I think a lot of times, and I think sometimes that people were like, yep, he's gone. And you can, I think that's also the hard part about what I do is, and I've early in my career, I've been asked, what would you do if you weren't an artist? And I go, well, I would, and the thing is, I love art. I love art museums. I love natural history museums. A lot of our family trips revolve around museums, visiting and try to get out to have some kind of outdoor adventure, but then back to the city, and different places to share our love. And my wife loves artwork as well, and museums. And it was funny. She was at the Met yesterday. She's on a job in New York, and then she's in Texas today. But she was visiting the Met with her brother, and sent me a painting that was when I was 8 years old. It was in Washington D.C. My dad had won an Arts for the Parks inaugural. Well, he actually got second place. I thought he got first place because when I was 8 years old, he'd gotten a lot of attention. And we're back there to meet Ronald Reagan, but Gorbachev was in town. So we met George Bush Sr., of all funny people, and Secretary of Interior, and a few other government people. And at the National Museum in Washington, D.C., there was a Winslow Homer painting of a man on a boat with sharks circling him. And to me, that was one of the most fantastic, like 8 years old, that sticks in my brain. And I've written about it on Instagram, about inspirational things that just remind me of what art can do and how impactful it can be. And I think when he first exhibited it, people thought it was like a very sad painting because there was no hope. All the shark-infested waters, the mast was broken off. This guy was going nowhere in a hurry. And then he painted, I think because of the criticism, he painted a ship off in the distance. So there was a little bit of hope, like he could be found and be rescued. And I always thought that was, in storytelling, when it came to painting, that taught me a little lesson of I think hope for sure in paintings. There's always something that can to raise your spirits. But that was one of the paintings she sent me yesterday without knowing, with a few other paintings, but that was the first one she sent me from the Met yesterday. And it's fun to see where that painting gets around to and people it gets to see. I think there's in a lot of these paintings that we talked about, heroes, there's people leave behind little bits of their spirit behind. And I think that's why definitely why I like art as much as it leaves a little bit of their hope, of their spirit behind and can inspire. And the studio helps surround me with good memories, good feelings, and a good spirit. And to get back to the hard thing, one of my I guess you could look at it as a low moment for me at the time. Like I didn't know what I was going to do after this happened to me. I'd got kicked out of a show in LA after a misunderstanding. And even after I explained it to the director, he goes, "Oh, well, you need to be more careful." And so I thought I'd smooth things over. When I explained him what had actually happened, he goes, "Oh, well, that's different." I go, "I know." Well, that quickly got me. I'm not sure what happened. And I've been invited back since then. And also asked out of it again. But I haven't, since it happened the first time, I haven't worried too much. My wife, after I got kind of kicked out, asked out, she goes, "Well, maybe, someone has something better in store for you. Like there's always something else, and maybe it'll be even better." And then it definitely was. I got called by a new friend who lives in France and invited me to a show over in France, and then that turned into a show in Japan, and that turned into some amazing friendships that I have found are a lot more important than the shows, and even some of because you want to take care of your family, you need to, you're making money, but some of these funny things that nobody high school friends or even friends that live in your town or your friends you go to lunch with aren't aware of and you don't share too often. Just because it's, can be personal and it can be, and sometimes you think to yourself, "Oh, no one wants to hear this kind of stuff," and you're constantly working. That's kind of how what turned into some of that motorcycle thing. And my dad, when I was a little kid too, he would take me to the Monarch Harley Davidson out on 8th North, and we'd peek through the window sometimes when it was closed, and on the way home from baseball games or different funny things or little league games. And then I think when I was 21 too, when my mom was out of town, I'd bought my first motorcycle. And so there's always been a kind of a little funny motorcycle. And when I was a little kid too, we knew university used to be just the 2-lane highway across the road now where all the, So Delicious and all the bank is now. That's where we used to go muskrat trapping, and there used to be the Bar M Ranch where the horses were. And that's where I got my horsemanship merit badge and would go shovel manure over there. But that's where we also rode my dad's motorcycles, is back there on that Lover's Lane up by the river that's been piped over. And in the evenings, we'd go across the street too and have campfires up in the trees and the bushes. And it was still it wasn't as big as Provo has gotten now. But all these, like any kind of hardship, it's hard for, I think, the moment. And then my wife was very thoughtful and pointed out to me, "Well, there's got to be something else. Like, is that the show?" I'm like, "Well, no, there are other shows." She's like, "Exactly." And then, but it opened up other doors and to friendships that have been a lot more important. And I've had no problem saying no to certain things now because the friendships matter more. And I've joked that I don't like people, or I'm kind of introverted or a hermit, and I stay in my studio. And part of that is just because I like to work, and my work happens to be in my studio, painting. And a lot of times, I don't talk too much about it. So this is kind of like I've done a few podcasts over the years, but it hasn't been about this kind of stuff. It's always been about something else or art, the artwork or different things. So
yeah, well, you said something a little while ago about that painting you loved with the shark circling, and you painted off in the distance a ship that maybe no one might not even notice.
It's very
if they
faint
weren't
too.
Looking. What hope or story do you believe you're telling?
So there is another artist that I really like, and he's a Swedish artist, and I think he died in 1923 or 1925, a guy named Bruno Lillefors. And a lot of his paintings I've looked at over the years, and it's kind of like there's always a struggle. It's like a bird nailing a squirrel, or some sea eagles nailing a rabbit on the shoreline. There's always, or a hunter after its prey, or different things. And I can identify with those things, a lot of it with wildlife and my own experiences. And there's always kind of did he get away? There's always an escape kind of a thing. And there's always a little hope in some. So a lot of that probably that first painting, I do like telling stories in my paintings, and a lot of them are, I've had bears come into camp, and sometimes it's because I've had bears come into my camp, and as Cub Scouts, or not Cub Scouts, but Boy Scouts, and been lucky nothing bad has happened, but you see the mess that they make, but there's always some kind of a struggle between kind of life on the edge, and it goes back to it can go back to adventure and the adventurous spirit, but there always is a little bit of hope. Like there's nobody. I don't do dead people or different things. Although every once in a while I did a painting of a growling painting once, and it was a very angry painting, and there's some ravens in it. And the camp is destroyed, but the birds are kind of aggravating the grizzly bear, and I actually got the painting sent back to me from the gallery saying, "This is too. They said that you should have sent us a picture first, and we wouldn't have taken it. It's too angry." And I think I did that painting almost in a protest because I was annoyed with how galleries work sometimes. And I even had a painting sent back to me. It was of a little weasel. And the gallery called and they said, oh, there was a guy in here that said that's not what they look like. I go, trust me, I know what they look like. Well, he says they no. I said, are you going to listen to me, the guy that's spent the time to paint this, do the research? And about a week later, I got the painting back in the mail. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And so there, like I said, there are funny low parts, and part of it. And my dad and I have joked about needing to have a sense of humor in this kind of stuff, because a lot of times it's just silly, and it's so easy to be annoyed, and we all get annoyed sometimes. And then sometimes like I say, the older I get, I try to do step back to see the humor in even things where people can have an impact, and to kind of mess your life up a little bit, or at least the way the week's going, or financially how your month might go or your quarter might go. And sometimes it takes you really have to step back and go, okay.
Yeah. Well, I love that your dad says you got to have a sense of humor to be able to cope with that, because you're going to go through difficulty. You're going to have paintings sent back from a gallery. You're not going to get into the show, but your wife, how wonderful her insight to say, well, what other door could this open? And oh my goodness, what it did. I love that story. and imagine if you could go back and take away that experience. I bet that felt like just rejection was heartbreaking.
Oh yeah.
From losing that show.
Well, because I tried for probably 10 years to get into it. And then, this is kind of funny, after the 10 years of trying to get into it, or assuming that they would extend the invitation, I realized, I went to their website and it says apply here. I'm like, you have to apply to this thing? And silly me.
You got an invitation to apply?
Well, no, it wasn't even an invitation. Like I said, this is the funny part, is I realized I needed to be submitting every year. Oh. And I assumed they were going to, because it says it's invitational. So I assumed they were the ones actively pursuing and looking for artists to be in the show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how many years have gone by without me read? I'm terrible at reading the fine print.
That's an interesting lesson to learn.
That was. And so what was funny about getting into the show is I did apply to it. And then like a week later, I get a call from the director. He's like, hey, I love your work. You're in. I said, great. I said, oh, did you see my application? He goes, what application? So yeah, it happened all the same time. And then, so that was interesting how that kind of happened. And I've even talked to another artist about another show that I've never been asked to be in, and I've have submitted over the years. And I said, are you in that show? He goes, no. And he's about 10 or 15 years older than I am. And I said, well, do you submit, or how do you go about it? This guy, 'cause I asked other artists questions too, a little bit like this. And he goes, well, I assume if they would have wanted me by now, they would have asked. I've been around for 30 something years. I'm not worried about their show. I go, hey, you know what? You're right. Like if they're not looking actively, if you're not on their radar, who cares? Cause there's some there are like 3 or 4 like nice big shows that are great. They have some of I think the best talented artists in America, and I'm part of some of them, and I'm not part of some other ones. And I'm perfectly fine with that. It can be frustrating. It has been in the past. I go, well, they got so-and-so. Like, what do you mean they got certain guys, and sometimes certain personalities rub you the wrong way. And at the same time you go, oh, who cares? You got that. Cause my dad and I have joked over the years, like, oh, who cares? Like if we worry about it too much, then we're wasting our own time when it comes to these kinds of things. And again, with, back to my dad too, he's pointed out, he goes, as long as you're painting your best paintings, you have nothing to worry about. Like quality will always sell, and you keep doing your work. And because he and I, we've read a lot of histories of other artists, American artists in the past, who they were very famous, in their heyday of when it came to producing their artwork. But towards the end of their careers, Impressionism came in the 20s, and they were out of fashion, and they couldn't give away their paintings. And I can't imagine what that would feel like, not being able to and I've seen some paintings in museums now where it says like Merry Christmas to so-and-so, and he gave them, to a cousin, and the paintings, 8 by 10 feet. Well, Albert Bierstadt and Thomas Moran, they almost couldn't give away their stuff towards the end of their careers. And to me, those were big inspirations of just fantastic artwork, the romantic Western paintings and with realistic aspects to them, because they were there. Thomas Moran came through here and he painted Slate Canyon and there's a few other places in Utah that he painted, and Bierstadt as well came through the Salt Lake Valley, and there's a few paintings that are just the Sierra Nevadas that are just my wife sent me one of those, a video of that one yesterday, and I thought, oh my goodness, I need to try harder. Is what I took away from.
Well, that's interesting. That still, I mean, you're in your mid 40s, and you see, your career is, you've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
You've made it, Nick. But I like to hear you say that. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's always somebody better. There's always someone who's going to inspire me. I got to work harder. I love to see that drive.
I'd say the hard part about having that drive, like I think I'm not sure what it is, because sometimes I'll sit down and after a few hours I go, sometimes you kind of forget what you're doing a little bit because you're going through the motions, but you're painting and you're trying to pay attention to details and light and color and everything. And then you kind of have a moment you're like, also your brain reminds you like you're sore or you've been leaning over in a funny direction for too long. And, but like I say, you have this vision of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be one of the harder parts is, and then how it's received out in the world, because you're kind of creating this vision and you have this, oh, this is going to be great. And then I'll go to the gallery or wherever it ends up, and I go, well, why is that one on the floor? Why is this not hung up? Why are those other guys' paintings intermixed with my paintings? And that doesn't always happen, but you kind of go, man.
Well, so what's that like? I mean, one, I'd like to know, what's it like to let a piece go?
So my wife, I've had people come to the studio, oh, you must have lots of your own paintings hanging in the house. And I go, I try not to.
Yeah.
And there are certain paintings that I actually do like. And I've actually hung a couple in the studio, and for whatever reason, if someone visits the studio, they go, "Oh, what's that one?" Mm. And then it doesn't last too long in the studio, but that's been rare where I have liked it enough to hang it in my studio. And lately, there's not enough room exactly.
Was that ever hard to let them go? And if so, was it because you loved it so much, or because you worried about that somebody else might appreciate it? Are these any of the feelings that you have or had when you were young?
So when I was probably younger, I probably thought a little bit like that, mm-hmm. like holding on to something. And then again, it goes back to my dad too. Is like, oh, you can always paint, because there's some fantastic artists that I would love to collect and have collected, but sometimes I can't afford certain mm-hmm. those guys. He goes, well, you can do it. You can make yours. And so sometimes I think when I do my own version of somebody else's, kind of an idea that someone mm-hmm. else has done, wildlife or a landscape or something, I've thought, oh boy, this is going to be great. And that's when I've held on to it, because it was kind of a fun idea based on someone else's idea that turned out nicely. And then you're solving your own problems. And it's almost like you've written something that you go, hey, this is kind of neat. And it's for you. And it wasn't for anybody else. And I think that's why if I've kept something, is because it was for me. Mm. And then, like I say, again, someone wanders into the studio and goes, hey, what's that? I want that one. And I go, oh, okay.
Well, what's that like when you're able to see a piece in someone's hands that really loves it? I mean, what is that like?
That actually is a great feeling. I've met some fantastic people over the years, collectors and different people at shows and gallery shows that I've had, and even here in the studio, where when you get to talking like we're talking, and even I know you and I have appreciation for the outdoors and just like good things. We have appreciation for good things, especially that might happen to come from Utah and the landscape that Utah lends itself to be. And when someone, like, the best compliment I've gotten from somebody isn't so much where they go, oh, it looks like a photograph, or it looks so realistic, mm-hmm. or it looks, because I see that on you see that on Instagram and a lot of photographic work out there, and a lot of things do look like photographs, and there is a lot of skill involved. But the best compliment is, oh, I swear I've been here before.
Ooh,
that's what I like. That's the compliment that's like, oh, good. And I think those are the kind of people that I resonate more with or gravitate more towards, and people that collect my own artwork too, is
takes them somewhere,
takes them someplace,
or to a memory.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love, and something that I think about a lot is it's how it makes someone feel.
Yeah.
Or how it contributes to how they feel. Like if they feel something.
So in the enthusiasm I have for my work, I think the people that are buying my work also have that kind of similar enthusiasm, because I might not be the most popular Western or wildlife guy out there, but I think there's a pocket of people that do love the outdoors. They do love the American West, and they love Africa, and they love wildlife, and they love certain aspects of the parts that, like, there are certain, it's not a whole complete picture all the time of that fits together. It's certain aspects, and of course, I think there are people that absolutely love the American West, absolutely love landscapes and certain times of day. And I've had people say, "Oh, is this valley?" I go, "No, but where is that?"
I want to go.
Now I want to go.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, so we've been talking about, in the last month or two, we've had a couple conversations specifically about gratitude. And so what does gratitude mean to you?
So yeah, when you called me up and we're talking about this idea and doing this together, I had actually been, and I think I mentioned to you, I'd been talking with some friends and my wife and about gratitude and what it actually means and what it can do. And I've tried not to lean on it just yet while we've been talking. But a lot of, I think when it comes to what any of us love or the things we're striving to do in the best way we can, I don't know if we'd be able to accomplish it without being grateful for, like, say, the ones that have come before us and certain sacrifices that other people have made so we could be here doing what we do and even talking about it. I mean, this is pretty amazing that we're able to talk about this. And again, like even being in America, people take that for granted. Living in Provo, Utah, people take that for granted. And I've heard people over the years, even some of our friends, oh, Provo's boring. It's this, it's that. And I'm like, it's beautiful. Like, this is an amazing place. And I've been told, oh, you still live there? I go, yes. I've been to so many wonderful places, and I still am thrilled to come home. And I come back to our, the Wasatch Front, and we live under Squaw Peak, and it's beautiful. And we have some fantastic sunsets and sunrises and beautiful rivers and mountains. And I get deer that wander past my studio windows here, and a fox in the backyard. And we used to have rabbits, but they're gone. I wonder why. I think, and then with even the friends that we've grown up with, it's hard. I think I would be ungrateful for not, appreciating the relationships that I've had with my parents, with my friends, and the people that you meet over the years. And like, again, shows that I get invited to. There's the work aspect of it, and there's the relationship. And I always joke again about being a hermit and not liking people, but I think that's not being truthful when you boil it down and think about it. And there's so many things that we can be fearful of or not want to expose ourselves to because it's hard. But again, like some of the best memories I've had are the hard things you go through. I was in Iceland with some friends in my early 20s, and we got ourselves stuck. Our car, we fell through a frozen river. And it took us about 9 or 10, 12 hours to get out of it. And then about a few hours later, I'd fallen asleep. And then our driver, I won't name any names, he knows who he is, decided to drive to the glacier. And it was by moonlight, but we pulled off the freeway into silt. And within 10 feet, we were stuck in about 12 inches of just silty mud.
Again.
And I'd woken up and I'm like, I said, what did you do? He goes, shut up, Coleman. I'm like, oh no. And then about 2 a.m, an Icelandic policeman pulled us out. And when he opened up his car, his music was blasting, "She works hard for the money," at 2 a.m, which I thought was pretty awesome. And then he's like, what were you doing? Like, and we're like, oh, we pulled off to the side of the road. And he's like, why? He couldn't believe, anyway. And that's probably the most fun trips I've ever been on. And we destroyed the car. Our trip, it was one of the warmest winters on record. Ice climbing was terrible. We were starving half the time because we realized as we were driving around all of Iceland that there's not a lot of restaurants just on the side of the road. And so we were quite hungry most of the time. And like I say, even that trip to Alaska where it rained, like we didn't shoot anything. Like the animals were gone. They were nowhere to be seen. The rain came in and we were hiding under a rock. The guide and I were way up high on the mountain after a black bear, and we hid under a humongous big rock because this rain just kept coming and coming and coming down, and we were hearing all these crashing things are all around us. And I go, what is that anyway? He goes, it's rocks like this that we're under that are crashing down. He goes, if it makes any noise, you got to move fast or no one will ever see us again. I went, what? Got to be kidding me. And then when we finally made it down, we crossed the river that was up to our knees in the morning, and it was up to our hip boots, the tops of our hip boots. And I was holding on to where he was holding the rifle, I was holding the rifle. He was kind of pulling me along. And he goes, stop. As we watched a tree with a big root ball float by us, that could have just grabbed us. And again, but there's these funny things that can go wrong that make certain things memorable. And I think even when it comes to really hard things, like losing a baby or something like that, my wife and I, we experienced that. I don't think our life was on a terrible course at that moment. And it put us on a better path. And one that we weren't expecting, and one that you, like a normal human, you can't imagine. Like, what could we be doing better? Oh, we're doing great. We're doing this, we're doing that. And you're both working hard, and and there's that, being, grateful in your circumstances, no matter what they are, what they can be, and your life can be miserable. And if you choose to stay there, and I know some people, there are real hardships that make it really, really hard. And again, that can help you be grateful and help you know that you can be of service to others and help pull them out sometimes. And if you are ready to do those kinds of things, I think sometimes we deal with hard things in order to help others with theirs sometimes. And I think that's what I think relationships can do, friendships can do. And it's hard sometimes. I'll go.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I could have said it better, Nick, is that those hard things are what made you capable to do other hard things.
Yeah. And
to see perspective and gratitude in them, even though it is hard.
Yeah.
But, if you could go back, would you let any of them go?
It's what's funny. You mentioned those things, and your brain can almost go back and remember some of those things, and I don't think you would trade them as hard as they are. And and it's crazy too, is the older I get, the more emotional I've become too. It kills me sometimes. I go, what is wrong with me?
Oh, it's right with you, Nick. Beautiful.
And sometimes it's hard to share those things too. So,
Well, I appreciate you so much. I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful we could have this conversation. And thanks for joining the podcast so we can share some of these stories with others. I'm grateful that you get to share your story and your legacy in these pieces with so many other people that get to have a piece of what inspires you in their home. I think that's just a spectacular gift that not only you get to hold, but that you get to share with others.
Definitely, I like that part. It's, again, like I said, when you find like-minded people and get to share, and sometimes you find people just, they're not even looking for a painting sometimes, and you find those people sometimes. And that I count myself very lucky for, and the friendships I've found that I never would have imagined, just with art, of all funny things, I think. But yeah, I'm glad that we've been friends for so many years, and it's always been fun to see what the Sparks family was up to and you are up to. And it's been fun, and I hope we can push forward and
here's to the next.
Try to keep doing good things. So
here's to the next 45 years of our life, right? Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Check out Nick. We'll put links to all of his content in the comments below. And until we see you next time, you're awesome. Thank you.